You want to know how we survived? Really? Well, get comfortable, because this isn't exactly a bedtime story. Unless your idea of sweet dreams involves interstellar warfare, alien invasions, and humanity being its typical, gloriously chaotic self. Lieutenant Commander Ethan Winters leaned back against the pitted metal wall of what had once been the Galactic Council's Grand Embassy on Proxima Centauri b. The blue-skinned Arcturian diplomat sitting across from him blinked all four of her eyes simultaneously, her species equivalent of eager anticipation. The historical archives mentioned that humans were unexpected allies, she said carefully, her translator pendant flickering with each syllable. But they lack certain contextual elements. Ethan snorted. That's diplomatic speak for your species makes absolutely no sense and terrifies us, but we're too polite to say it directly. I would never, the Arcturian began, her skin flushing a deeper shade of blue. It's fine, Ethan said, waving a hand. We're used to it. Look, I was there when it all went down. Ground Zero, the Battle of New Geneva. And if you want the real story, not the sanitized version they teach in your fancy xenoanthropology courses, I'll tell you what really happened when humanity showed up to the galactic party. The Arcturian settled into a more comfortable position, her forearms arranging themselves in what Ethan had come to recognize as their culture's listening posture. I am authorized to record this oral history for the archives, she said, touching a small device on her belt. Record away, Ethan replied, taking a swig from his canteen. Though your bosses might want to slap a warning label on this one. The day of first contact, as the council likes to call it, was actually day 47 of what we were calling the "oh shit, we're all gonna die" apocalypse. Catchy, right? The Karak had appeared in our solar system without warning. Massive hive ships that blotted out the sun when they passed overhead. We didn't even know what they looked like at first. They just showed up, ignored all our attempts at communication, and started systematically dismantling our infrastructure. Mars colony? Gone in 6 hours. Lunar base? Vaporized before they could even sound the emergency protocols. Earth's orbital defenses? Might as well have been throwing spitballs at a battleship. I was stationed at New Geneva, Switzerland, or what was left of it. The United Earth Defense Force had pulled back to a handful of fortified positions, and we were making our last stand in the Alps. Classic human move, by the way. When facing extinction, we apparently default to, let's hide in the mountains like it's 1945. The bunker was 20 levels deep, carved into the mountain itself. Nuclear-hardened, EMP-shielded the works. Not that it mattered. The Karak had tech that made nukes look like firecrackers. Their ground forces, these biomechanical nightmares that were part machine, part insect, part what the actual hell, had been steadily pushing us back for weeks. Commander Alexa Reed was in charge of our particular slice of the apocalypse. Picture a 5'0" woman with more combat decorations than most museums, and the kind of stare that could make a drill sergeant rethink his life choices. Winters! She barked, finding me in the mess hall where I was enjoying what was probably going to be my last cup of terrible military coffee. Get your team to Sector 7. We've got incoming. I didn't even ask how many. It didn't matter anymore. The Karak arrived in waves, each one larger than the last. We'd lost contact with North America 3 days earlier. Asia had gone dark a week before that. As far as we knew, we were the last organized resistance on the planet. My squad was down to 6 people. We'd started with 22. Each of us was running on stims, exhaustion, and the particular brand of gallows humor that only surfaces when you're pretty sure you're about to join the Extinction Club. Hey, LT, said Kowalski as I approached our ready room. Heard the bugs are coming to dinner. Did we remember to set out the good china? Kowalski was our heavy weapons specialist. Built like a brick wall and about as subtle. The massive railgun he carried like it was a toy had earned him the nickname Thunder among the squad. Very funny, I replied, checking my own weapon. A modified XM-77 pulse rifle that had seen better days. You got anything left in that monster? He patted the railgun affectionately. 3 full mags and 2 partials. Enough to send a few dozen more of those bastards back to whatever hell they crawled out of. The rest of my team was already gearing up. Lieutenant Davi Oliveira, our Brazilian comms expert, was running final checks on our tactical network. Corporal Naomi Clark, our medic, was stuffing extra trauma packs into every available pocket of her armor. Sergeant Yusuf Al-Fahim, our best scout, was disassembling and reassembling his sniper rifle with practiced efficiency. And Private First Class Lee Young-hoon, the newest addition to our team, a South Korean tech specialist who'd somehow survived the fall of Seoul, was fiddling with something that looked like a cross between a tablet and a weapon. What's that, Lee? I asked, nodding toward his contraption. Karak communication jammer, sir, he replied without looking up. At least I think it is. Reverse engineered from some components we salvaged last week. Probably won't work, but... He shrugged. But we're fresh out of good ideas, so what the hell? I finished for him. Bring it along! The bunker's alert system suddenly blared to life. A pulsing red light accompanied by a 3-tone warning that everyone still alive on Earth had come to dread. Proximity alert, Divey translated unnecessarily. Multiple signatures incoming. Bigger than the last wave. Of course it is, Naomi muttered, snapping the final piece of her armor into place. Because why not make our last stand extra special? I checked the tactical display. The Karrak were approaching from the north, a swarm of red dots so numerous they looked like a solid mass on the screen. All right, people, I said, falling back on the routine of command even though we all knew the score. Let's move to Sector 7. Standard formation. Conserve ammo when possible, but if this is it, make every shot count. Yusuf, always the quietest of the group, simply nodded. Been an honor, sir, he said softly. Save the eulogies, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not planning on dying today. None of us were planning on it, sir, Kowalski said with a grim laugh. But the bugs apparently didn't get the memo. We moved through the bunker's corridors, passing other soldiers rushing to their positions. The faces I saw were a mix of grim determination and barely concealed fear. These weren't fresh recruits anymore. Everyone had seen what the Karrak could do. Everyone had lost friends, family. When we reached Sector 7, a reinforced outpost near one of the bunker's emergency exits, we found Commander Reed already there, studying a holographic map with intense concentration. Winters, she acknowledged without looking up. Your team will hold this junction. If they break through here, they have a direct path to the Central Command. Don't let that happen. With all due respect, Commander, I said. The sensors are showing at least 1,000 Karrak troops. We're 6 people. She finally looked up, her eyes bloodshot from too many sleepless nights. I'm well aware of the odds, Lieutenant Commander. But unless you've got a secret weapon tucked away that I don't know about, this is where we make our stand. Before I could respond, Davy's hand flew to his ear. Commander LT, I'm picking up something strange on comms. Reed frowned. Correct, don't use radio communications. What are you hearing? That's just it, Davy said, his expression puzzled. It's human. Military band encryption, but not one of ours. And it's coming from above? Reed and I exchanged a glance. Above meant orbit, and as far as we knew, there was nothing human left in orbit. Patch it through, Reed ordered. Davy worked his equipment for a moment, then nodded. A burst of static filled the air, followed by a crisp, accented voice that none of us recognized. Repeat, this is Captain Marcus Fletcher of the UES Dauntless to any Earth forces. We are engaging Karrak vessels in high orbit. Ground support inbound. Hold position and transmit coordinates for fire support, over. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the bunker's ever-present hum of machinery seemed to fade away as we all processed what we'd just heard. UES, Kowalski finally said. Since when does Earth have a ship called the Dauntless? And who the hell is firing on Karrak in orbit? Reed was already moving. Davy, establish a secure channel. Authentication protocols Alpha 7 Delta. Find out who these people are. Yes, ma'am, Davy replied, fingers flying over his comm unit. I moved to Reed's side. Commander, if this is some kind of Karrak trick, then we're already dead, she finished. But if it's not... The comm crackled again. Earth forces, this is Captain Fletcher. We have your location. Be advised, ground forces deploying to your position in 3 minutes. Suggest you clear landing zone Delta, half-click east of your position. Things might get a bit... explosive. Reed hesitated for only a moment before making her decision. Winters, take your team to the surface. Landing zone Delta is the old helipad. If these are friendlies, guide them in. If not, we'll handle it, I assured her. The journey to the surface was tense. We hadn't been above ground in days. The Karrak air superiority made it virtually suicide. But now, as we carefully made our way through the emergency exit tunnels, I couldn't help but feel a tiny flicker of something I'd thought long extinguished. Hope. This is insane, Naomi whispered as we approached the final security door. There's no way humans have spacecraft capable of fighting the Karrak. We were barely achieving reliable Mars transit before they showed up. Maybe it's not just humans, Lee suggested. Maybe we made friends, Kowalski snorted. Yeah, because the universe is just full of friendly aliens eager to save our asses. The security door required both my and Yusuf's biometric authentication. As it slowly slid open, the first thing that hit us was the smell. The acrid tang of burning metal and the distinctive ozone scent of energy weapons discharge. "Masks on," I ordered, even though our armor could only filter out conventional contaminants, not whatever exotic particles the Carrack weapons might have left behind. We emerged into twilight. The helipad was about 300 meters ahead, across what had once been a manicured lawn but was now a cratered wasteland. In the distance, the skeletal remains of Geneva's once proud skyline were silhouetted against the darkening sky. And above was something I'd never seen before. The clouds were lit from within by flashes of light, blue, red, white, like a thunderstorm on steroids. Occasionally, a streak of fire would arc across the sky, followed by a distant boom that I could feel in my chest. "That's a space battle," Lee whispered in awe. "An actual space battle. Stay focused," I reminded them. "We need to secure the LZ. Yusuf, find a vantage point. Kowalski with me. Davy, maintain comms with the bunker. Naomi, Lee, watch our 6. We moved quickly across the broken ground, using the craters for cover. Surprisingly, there was no sign of Carrack activity in the immediate vicinity, which made no sense. Their assault force had been minutes away. When we reached the helipad, I signaled for everyone to take defensive positions while I surveyed the area. The reinforced concrete landing zone was mostly intact, though scored with blast marks and what looked like acid burns from Carrack weapons. "LT," Yusuf's voice came through my comm. "You need to see this." I moved to his position at the edge of the helipad. He wordlessly handed me his binoculars and pointed north. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. The Carrack assault force, the one that had been heading straight for our bunker, was now scattered across the valley below. But they weren't advancing. They were retreating? No, that wasn't right. They were being systematically destroyed. Black dots were descending from the clouds, fast, angular shapes that moved with a precision that seemed impossible. As I watched, one of these shapes dropped directly into a cluster of Carrack troops. There was a flash of blue light, and when it faded, nothing remained but scorched earth. "What the hell am I looking at?" I breathed. "I believe those would be us," a new voice said from behind. I whirled around, weapon raised, to find myself facing a man in armor unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was sleek, black, with blue energy lines tracing complex patterns across its surface. The helmet was featureless except for a blue visor that curved around where the eyes would be. Behind him, 5 more similarly armored figures were emerging from nowhere. One moment there was empty air, the next they were just there. "Active camouflage," Lee whispered in my ear, his voice tinged with awe. "Beyond anything we have." The lead figure reached up and touched something on his helmet. The faceplate retracted, revealing a man in his late 30s with close-cropped dark hair, bright green eyes, and a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. "Captain Marcus Fletcher," he said, extending a hand as casually as if we were meeting at a cocktail party, and not in the middle of an alien apocalypse. "United Earth Space Force. Sorry we're late to the party." I didn't take his hand. "There is no United Earth Space Force." Fletcher's smile didn't waver. "Not in your timeline, no. But things change when you're facing extinction. Speaking of which," he glanced at a display on his wrist. "We should probably get inside. The Dauntless is about to start orbital bombardment, and trust me, you don't want to be topside when that happens." "So you're from the future," Commander Reed said flatly. We were back in the bunker's command center. Fletcher and his team had followed us inside without hesitation, submitting to our security protocols with amused tolerance. Their weapons, sleek, deadly-looking rifles that hummed with some kind of internal energy, remained holstered. "Not exactly," Fletcher replied. "More like a parallel track. One where Earth got a few more years before the Carrack showed up. Long enough to develop some rather essential technologies." "And you just happened to find our Earth right as we're about to be wiped out?" Reed's skepticism was palpable. Fletcher's expression turned grim. "Not by chance, Commander. We've been searching for other Earths, other human civilizations targeted by the Carrack. Turns out they've been systematically eliminating humanity across multiple realities. We've managed to save 3 so far. You'll be the 4th, if all goes according to plan." I exchanged glances with my team. Kowalski was openly staring at Fletcher's armor. Lee was practically vibrating with questions he was too disciplined to blurt out. Davy and Naomi looked cautiously hopeful, while Yusuf maintained his usual stoic expression. "Why would these Carrack target humanity specifically?" Reed asked. "We barely had interplanetary travel when they arrived. We're hardly a threat." One of Fletcher's team, a woman with lieutenant's markings on her armor, spoke up. "It's not about what you are. It's about what you will become." Fletcher nodded. "The Carrack are a hive species with a highly developed precognitive ability. They don't just see the present, they glimpse potential futures. And in those futures, humanity doesn't just survive. We thrive. We expand. Eventually, we become the dominant species in the galaxy. That's hard to believe, I said, looking around at our battered command center, our exhausted personnel. Fletcher's smile returned with a predatory edge. Is it? Look at what you've accomplished already. The Karek have conquered entire star systems with minimal resistance. Yet here, Earth, they've been bogged down for almost 2 months, fighting a species with practically Stone Age technology compared to theirs. Stone Age is a bit harsh, Kowalski muttered. The point is, Fletcher continued, humans are notoriously difficult to exterminate. We adapt, we improvise, we endure. The Karek recognized that trait as an existential threat and decided to nip it in the bud, across multiple realities. Reed's posture had gradually shifted from skeptical to attentive. So what's your plan, Captain? Because even if what you're saying is true, the Karek still outnumber and outgun us by factors I can't even calculate. Fletcher's eyes gleamed. That's where you're wrong, Commander. The battle in orbit? That's not just the Dauntless. That's the vanguard of the combined human fleet. 47 ships from 6 different human civilizations, all with a serious bone to pick with the Karek. A lieutenant at one of the monitoring stations suddenly straightened. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures in orbit. The Karek ships they're breaking formation. Some appear to be attempting to retreat. And there it is, Fletcher said with satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. He turned to me. Lieutenant Commander Winters, I understand you and your team have been on the front lines against the Karek ground forces. I nodded cautiously. For what it's worth. It's worth everything, Fletcher said firmly. Because you understand how they move, how they fight on Earth terrain. We need that knowledge. Why? I asked. Intelligence suggests there's one burrowed under what used to be CERN. Reed's eyes widened. The Large Hadron Collider Complex? That's less than 10 kilometers from here, but it's deep behind Karek lines. Not anymore, Fletcher said, nodding toward the lieutenant at the monitoring station. Orbital strikes have created a corridor straight to it, but we need to move fast before they can regroup. This is insanity, I said. Even with your fancy armor and weapons, we'd be walking into the heart of their territory. Fletcher fixed me with a steady gaze. Tell me, Winters, how many people have you lost fighting a war you can't win? The question hit like a physical blow. Images flashed through my mind. Friends, colleagues, civilians we'd failed to save. Too many, I finally answered. Then help us make sure they didn't die for nothing, Fletcher said quietly. This isn't just about saving what's left of your Earth. It's about making sure the Karek can never do this again, to any human world. I looked at my team. Despite their exhaustion, I could see a new fire kindling in their eyes. Hope was a dangerous, powerful drug. Commander? I turned to Reed. She studied Fletcher for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Take your team, Winters. Support Captain Fletcher's operation, but remember your primary allegiance. Always, ma'am. Fletcher's smile was grim but satisfied. We drop in 30 minutes. I suggest your team get whatever rest they can. It's going to be a long night. The dropship, if you could call it that, was unlike anything I'd ever seen. No visible engines, no wings, just a sleek obsidian teardrop that somehow defied gravity. The interior was cramped but efficient, with acceleration couches that molded themselves to our bodies. Fletcher's team consisted of 6 specialists, each with armor similar to his but with subtle variations. They'd introduced themselves with military efficiency. Lieutenant Mei Lin, tactical officer and Fletcher's second-in-command. Her armor featured additional antenna arrays and what looked like enhanced sensor packages. Sergeant Kyle Donnelly, heavy weapons. His bulkier armor housed what he casually referred to as a portable mass driver. Corporal Zoe Barnes, infiltration specialist. Her armor was the most streamlined, with additional stealth modules. Specialist Omar Khan, combat engineer. His armor bristled with tools and tech I couldn't begin to identify. And Dr. René Dubois, xenobiologist. The only one whose armor seemed designed for defense rather than offense, with additional shielding and what he called containment systems. My team had been equipped with what Fletcher called basic protection. Sleek, lightweight armor that wouldn't have looked out of place in a sci-fi film. It wasn't as advanced as what his team wore, but Lee nearly wept when he saw the integrated systems. The neural interface alone is at least a century beyond our tech, he whispered as he helped Naomi adjust her helmet. It's reading and anticipating your movements before you even make them. Great, Kowalski grumbled. So now even our armor knows what we're going to do before we do. Fletcher overheard and chuckled. Think of it more as a partner than a tool. The armor learns from you, adapts to your fighting style. By the end of this mission, it'll feel like a second skin. Assuming we live that long, Yusuf remarked dryly. Always the optimist, Sarge, Davies said with a forced grin. The ship, Fletcher called it a tactical insertion vehicle, rose silently into the night air. Through the viewports, I could see Geneva spread out below us, the once beautiful city now a battlefield of broken buildings and burning craters. What's the plan once we reach CERN? I asked Fletcher, who was checking something on a holographic display that hovered in the air before him. Simple, he replied without looking up. We infiltrate the facility, locate the Queen, sedate her, and extract her back to the Dauntless. That doesn't sound simple at all, I pointed out. This earned me a brief smile. It's all relative, Winters. Compared to, say, developing faster-than-light travel or surviving a Karak invasion with 20th century tech, it's a walk in the park. Lieutenant Lin joined us, her helmet retracted to reveal sharp features and calculating eyes. Drop zone is hot, she reported. Orbital scans show approximately 200 Karak defenders remaining in the target area. Most are disoriented from the bombardment, but they're regrouping quickly. Fletcher nodded. Expected. Distribute the target packages. Lynn touched something on her wrist, and suddenly a 3D hologram appeared in front of each of us. A detailed map of the CERN facility, with entry points and objectives clearly marked. Primary target is located in the Collider Ring, Fletcher explained. Specifically in what used to be the Atlas detector cavern. Karak queens require specific environmental conditions. The cavern's size and depth made it ideal for their purposes. How do we get in? I asked. The main access points will be heavily guarded. We don't use the main access, Fletcher replied. We make our own. The ship began to descend rapidly, causing my stomach to lurch despite the inertial dampening I could feel from the armor. 30 seconds to insertion, Lynn announced. Activate combat systems. Fletcher's team moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and armor with minimal communication. My team followed suit, though with noticeably more tension. Remember, Fletcher said as the ship slowed its descent, the Karak communicate through a localized psychic field. Their individual drones are nearly mindless without it. Dr. Dubois? The xenobiologist tapped something on his wrist, and a high-pitched whine filled the air, just at the edge of hearing. Psionic dampener, he explained in a heavy French accent. It will confuse the drones in our immediate vicinity, make their responses slower, but it won't work on the higher castes or anywhere near the Queen. So we'll have the element of surprise for about 30 seconds, I summarized. More like 15, Dubois corrected with a Gallic shrug. But it's better than nothing, no? The ship touched down with barely a tremor. The side panels slid open silently, revealing a landscape of twisted metal and shattered concrete. We'd landed in what had once been a parking lot, now a crater-pocked wasteland. Move out, Fletcher ordered. Formation, Charlie. Winters, your team integrated at positions 2, 4, 6, and 7. We deployed smoothly, spreading out across the broken ground. The night was eerily quiet. No birds, no insects. Not even the wind seemed to disturb the silence. The only sound was the occasional distant rumble from the battle still raging in orbit. The CERN facility loomed ahead, or what was left of it. Most of the above-ground structures had been demolished, either by the Karak during their initial assault, or by the recent orbital bombardment. But we weren't heading for the main entrance. Fletcher led us toward what appeared to be a maintenance access point, half buried under debris. Con, Fletcher said quietly. The combat engineer moved forward, placing what looked like small metal discs at strategic points around the debris. He stepped back, made a gesture with his armored hand, and the discs pulsed with blue light. The debris simply dissolved, revealing a dark tunnel beneath. Molecular destabilization, Con explained, catching my surprised look. Breaks down matter at the atomic level, cleaner than explosives. And quieter, Fletcher added. Winters, you and Sergeant Al-Fahim take point. Your experience with the local Karak tactics will be valuable. I nodded to Yusuf, and we moved forward into the tunnel, our armor's enhanced vision systems automatically adjusting to the darkness. The tunnel was narrow but intact, sloping gently downward. This leads to one of the secondary service corridors, Fletcher said over the comm. From there we can access the main ring. We moved silently through the tunnel, each step taking us deeper into what had once been one of humanity's greatest scientific achievements. Now it was an alien hive. The further we went, the more the environment changed. The walls began to show signs of the distinctive Karak resin, a biomechanical substance they used to reinforce and reshape captured structures. After about 5 minutes of careful advance, We reached a junction where the human-made tunnel intersected with what was clearly a Carrack-created passage. The alien tunnel was larger, its walls lined with the pulsing, vein-like structures that characterized their architecture. First contact likely within the next 50 meters, Lynn murmured, studying something on her wrist display. Psionic activity increasing. Activate tactical systems, Fletcher ordered. Weapons free, but prioritize stealth as long as possible. Our armor responded automatically, a subtle hum building as various systems came online. My HUD suddenly expanded, showing thermal signatures ahead and highlighting potential threats. That is seriously cool, Kowalski whispered, clearly experiencing the same enhancement. Focus, I reminded him, though I shared his amazement. The technology gap between our forces and Fletcher's was staggering. We moved into the Carrack tunnel, every sense alert for danger. The passage widened as we continued, the ceiling rising until we were in what felt like a massive underground cathedral, built to alien proportions and aesthetics. And then we saw them. Carrack drones, dozens of them, moving in that unsettling mechanical way they had. Like insects pretending to be robots, or perhaps robots pretending to be insects. In the enhanced vision provided by our armor, I could see details I'd never noticed before. The way their exoskeletons weren't quite solid, the strange blue fluid that pulsed through transparent sections of their limbs. Hold position, Fletcher ordered softly. Dampeners at maximum. The Carrack moved about their tasks with singular focus, seemingly unaware of our presence. They were preparing something, assembling structures from the resin material, creating new sections of their hive. The access to the main ring is through that chamber, Fletcher said, indicating a large opening on the far side of the cavern. We need to cross without alerting them. No way to go around? Davi asked. Fletcher shook his head. Time is critical. The longer we're here, the more likely the Queen will sense our presence, dampeners or not. I studied the movement patterns of the drones. They're following a rhythm, I observed. There's a gap in their patrol pattern every 40 seconds or so. Fletcher nodded approvingly. Good eye. We'll move in teams of 2, timed with the gap. Corporal Barnes, you're up first with Dr. Dubois. The infiltration specialist and the xenobiologist moved forward with incredible stealth, their armor seeming to bend light around them as they slipped between the alien workers. They reached the far side without incident. Lincoln, you're next, Fletcher ordered. The tactical officer and combat engineer repeated the maneuver, timing their movement perfectly with the gap in the Carrack activity. Winters, you and Sergeant Donnelly, Fletcher continued. Then the rest of your team, followed by myself. I moved forward with the heavy weapons specialist, my heart pounding despite the calm efficiency of our advance. We were halfway across when something changed. One of the drones stopped its work, its head swiveling in a distinctly mechanical motion. For a moment I was certain it had spotted us. Then it resumed its task, and we completed our crossing without incident. The rest of my team made it across in their pairs, followed by Fletcher. We regrouped in the access tunnel leading to the main ring. That was too easy, Kowalski muttered. Don't jinx it, Naomi hissed. Fletcher consulted something on his wrist display. The Queen's chamber is approximately 800 meters ahead. The collider ring has been repurposed. Repurposed how? Lee asked. You'll see, Fletcher replied grimly. Move out, but be ready. The closer we get to the Queen, the less effective our dampeners will be. The tunnel widened into what had once been the massive circular tunnel housing the Large Hadron Collider itself. But the scientific equipment was long gone, replaced by a nightmare landscape of Carrack bioengineering. The curved walls were now lined with pulsating organic matter. Strange pod-like structures hung from the ceiling, each containing what looked disturbingly like developing Carrack drones. It's a breeding facility, Dr. Dubois whispered, his scientific curiosity evident despite the horror of our surroundings. The Queen is using the ring's structure to expand her brood. All the more reason to shut it down, Fletcher said. We continued along the ring, moving as quietly as our armor allowed. The tunnel curved gradually to the right, following the massive circle of the collider. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only about 15 minutes, we approached a section that widened dramatically. Atlas detector cavern ahead, Fletcher announced. Final equipment check. As we prepared for what would likely be heavy resistance, Dr. Dubois approached me with a small cylindrical device. Lieutenant Commander, he said quietly, I need someone from your team to carry this. What is it? I asked, eyeing the device suspiciously. Insurance, he replied. If the capture fails, this needs to be deployed as close to the Queen as possible. I understood immediately. It's a bomb, he nodded. Of sorts. A psionic disruption device. It won't harm the physical structure, but it will sever the psychic connection between the Queen and every drone on the planet. Without that connection, They'll be helpless, I finished. Why not just use this from the start? Because a dead queen tells us nothing, Fletcher interjected, having overheard our conversation. We need to understand how they're tracking human worlds, how they're moving between realities. That information could save countless other Earths. I weighed the device in my hand. It was surprisingly light. I'll take it. Fletcher nodded once, then turned to address the entire team. Final approach. Expect heavy resistance. Priority is containing the queen. Secondary objectives are minimizing structural damage to the chamber itself. We need it intact for extraction. We moved forward, tension building with each step. The tunnel widened further, the ceiling rising until we were in a vast underground chamber. And there, in the center of what had once been the home of one of the most sophisticated scientific instruments ever built by humanity, was the Karak Queen. She was monstrous. Easily the size of a small house, with a body that seemed to be an unsettling hybrid of insect, machine, and something else entirely. Multiple limbs, I counted at least 12, extended from her central mass, some ending in manipulators, others in what were clearly weapons. Her carapace pulsed with the same blue energy that ran through all Karak technology. And surrounding her, arranged in concentric circles, were hundreds of Karak warriors, larger, more heavily armored versions of the drones we'd seen earlier. Well, Kowalski whispered beside me, I guess we found the boss level. Fletcher's team spread out in a practiced formation, each taking position behind what little cover the transformed chamber offered. My team followed suit, years of combat experience guiding us despite the alien nature of our surroundings. Dampeners at maximum, Fletcher ordered quietly. Prepare for Phase 1. The Queen hasn't spotted us yet, Lynn reported, her voice tense. But her guards are agitated, something's wrong. As if responding to her words, several of the Karak warriors near the perimeter suddenly froze, their sensor arrays swiveling toward our position. They've detected the dampening field, Dubois hissed. We need to move now. Fletcher didn't hesitate. Execute Phase 1! In perfect synchronization, Fletcher's team activated something on their armor. A pulse of blue energy erupted from each of them, spreading across the chamber like a silent wave. When it reached the Karak warriors, they staggered, their coordinated movements dissolving into confused, disjointed twitching. Psionic disruptor, Khan explained hurriedly as he moved forward. Temporary interruption of the hive mind. We have maybe 40 seconds before they adapt. Fletcher was already in motion, charging directly toward the Queen with a speed that seemed impossible in full armor. Donnelly followed, his massive weapon powering up with a rising whine. Lynn and Barnes split to the flanks, picking off warriors that were recovering too quickly.
Humans rely on chaos. A damaged human frigate suddenly vented atmosphere, spinning itself sideways to avoid incoming fire. Another ship fired missiles while its own hull was still burning. They fight while wounded, the general said. They fight while outnumbered. The projection zoomed out. The 40 human ships had become 30, then 20, then 10. Yet somehow the Drevian fleet kept losing ships. How? Someone whispered. Vartal answered without emotion. Because humans do not measure victory the way we do. The hologram displayed the final moment of the battle. One last human ship remained, a destroyer, barely holding together. Its engines flared brighter than the sun. It broadcast a message, Vartal said quietly. The chamber speakers replayed the ancient transmission. A human voice echoed through the hall. You can destroy our ships. You can destroy our cities, but you will never destroy our will to fight. The destroyer accelerated, straight into the heart of the Drevian fleet. The explosion swallowed the screen. Silence filled the War Council chamber. Overlord Krax finally spoke. So you lost a battle? Vartal slowly shook his head. No. The hologram shifted again. Years passed in seconds, human shipyards expanding. New fleets emerging, colonies multiplying across nearby stars. They rebuilt faster than we could recover, Vartal said. They studied our tactics, adapted to our weapons, improved their ships. Another image appeared. The Bay's second war. This time the Drevian fleet was destroyed in days. And after that, Vartal continued, the humans did something unexpected. The projection showed human diplomats arriving at the Drevian homeworld. They offered peace. The Overlord frowned. Why? Vartal's scarred face tightened slightly. Because they had already proven their point. The old warrior leaned forward, his voice low. You see, humans do not fight to win a single battle. They fight to make sure you never want to fight them again. The chamber was completely silent now. The younger commanders looked at the holographic image of Earth, not with contempt, with caution, with fear. Overlord Krax stared at the projection for a long moment. Then he slowly deactivated the invasion plan. Perhaps, he muttered, there are easier targets. General Vartal leaned back in his chair. Outside the chamber windows, the stars stretched endlessly into the dark. Somewhere among them, human fleets traveled quietly between worlds, watching, waiting, prepared. And across the galaxy, every seasoned warrior already knew the truth the Overlord had just learned. You can challenge humans. You can even win a battle against them. But starting a war with humanity always ends the same way, because humans never truly lose. They simply learn, adapt, and come back stronger. And that is why the strongest warriors in the galaxy all agree on one rule. Attacking humans never ends well.
Winters, get your team to the secondary positions, Fletcher ordered through the comm. Keep the warriors off us while we handle the Queen. I signaled my team, and we moved to the positions marked on our HUDs. The chamber had descended into chaos. The disoriented warriors were firing wildly, their energy weapons leaving scorch marks on the chamber walls. Some were attacking each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe. The Queen, however, was far from helpless. As Fletcher approached, she reared up, her massive form pulsing with energy. A piercing psychic scream tore through my mind, overwhelming even the protection of our armor's systems. I staggered, nearly dropping to my knees from the psychic assault. "Push through it!" Fletcher's voice cut through the pain. "It's just pain. It can't actually harm you." Easy for him to say. But I forced myself back to my feet, bringing my weapon to bear on the nearest warrior. The rifle, a pulse accelerator according to the brief instruction I'd received, fired with barely a recoil, sending a burst of energy that cut through the warrior's carapace like it was paper. Kowalski had adapted to his new weapon with predictable enthusiasm. "This thing is beautiful!" he shouted as his heavier version of the pulse rifle tore through 3 warriors with a single shot. Yusuf had found a perch on an elevated section of machinery, his sniper skills translating perfectly to the advanced weapon he'd been given. One by one, warriors that were beginning to coordinate dropped with precision shots to their sensor arrays. Davy and Naomi were working in tandem, him calling out patterns in the warriors' movements, her targeting the weak points in their armor. And Lee, our tech specialist, was doing something with his armor's systems that seemed to be confusing the warriors' targeting capabilities. For a brief, exhilarating moment, I allowed myself to hope. We were actually holding our own. The most advanced alien invasion force humanity had ever faced was being pushed back by a handful of soldiers with borrowed technology. Then the Queen unleashed her full power. The blue energy coursing through her body suddenly intensified, becoming almost blinding. A shockwave of psionic energy blasted outward, slamming into us with physical force. My armor's systems screeched warnings as they struggled to compensate. "The dampeners are failing," Dubois shouted, his voice strained. "We need to deploy the—" His words cut off as a warrior's energy blast caught him squarely in the chest. His armor absorbed most of the impact, but the force still sent him flying backward into a wall. Fletcher and his remaining team had reached the Queen, attempting to deploy what looked like massive restraint devices around her thrashing limbs. Donnelly's weapon was firing continuously now, targeting precise points on the Queen's carapace. Not to kill, I realized, but to disable specific systems. "Winters!" Fletcher's voice crackled through the comm. "The disruptor! We're losing containment!" I looked down at the device Dubois had given me, still clutched in my hand. The insurance policy. If they couldn't capture the Queen, we'd at least sever her connection to the Hive. But Fletcher was still trying for capture. His team was fighting with everything they had, and they were so close. The restraints were partially deployed, the Queen's movements becoming more restricted. A decision point. Follow orders and wait, or act on my own initiative. The Queen's next psionic blast decided for me. This one was focused, a spear of mental energy that targeted Fletcher directly. I watched in horror as his armor's energy field flared and then died, the systems overloaded. He dropped to one knee, visibly struggling to remain conscious. "Kowalski!" I shouted. "Suppressing fire! Yusuf, cover me! The rest of you fall back to position Delta!" I didn't wait to see if they obeyed. I charged forward, dodging energy blasts and flailing warrior limbs. The device in my hand seemed to grow heavier with each step, its purpose crystallizing in my mind. Fletcher saw me coming. Despite his obvious pain, he managed to gesture toward the Queen's underside. "Central neural cluster," he gasped. "Beneath the primary carapace," I understood. Not just anywhere would do. The disruptor needed to be placed at the heart of the Queen's nervous system. The remaining members of Fletcher's team saw what I was attempting and adjusted their efforts accordingly. Lynn laid down covering fire, her weapon set to maximum dispersion. Khan deployed some kind of energy barrier that diverted the warrior's attacks. I reached the Queen's massive form, sliding beneath one of her thrashing limbs. Up close, she was even more terrifying. A nightmarish blend of biology and technology that defied classification. Her underside pulsed with the same blue energy, but there was a section where the carapace formed a distinct pattern, almost like a grotesque flower. The neural cluster. I jammed the disruptor against it and activated the device with a firm press of my thumb. Nothing happened. I tried again, frantically checking the device for any sign of malfunction. Had it been damaged during the fight? The Queen seemed to sense what I was attempting. One of her limbs swung toward me with devastating speed. I rolled aside, barely avoiding being crushed. "It's not working!" I shouted into the comm. "Manual override," Fletcher's strained voice replied. "The casing, twist and separate." I examined the device again and saw what he meant. The cylindrical casing had a subtle seam running along its length. I twisted the two halves in opposite directions and felt them separate, revealing a complex mechanism within. Now what? "The core needs direct contact with her neural tissue," Fletcher instructed. "You need to—" His voice cut off as another blast of psionic energy rocked the chamber. I was running out of time. Looking at the exposed core of the device, a pulsing blue-white crystal, I made a split-second decision. The Queen's carapace was too thick for the device to penetrate as designed, but there was a gap where one of Donnelly's shots had damaged the outer layer. I rammed the crystal into the gap with all my strength. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the crystal began to glow with increasing intensity. The Queen's movements became frantic, her limbs thrashing in what could only be described as panic. "Everyone out!" Fletcher shouted, somehow back on his feet. "Now!" His team was already retreating, dragging the injured Dubois. My team had maintained their positions, providing covering fire. "Fall back," I ordered them. "Emergency extraction protocol!" I turned to follow my own order, but one of the Queen's limbs caught me, sending me flying across the chamber. I slammed into what remained of the detector equipment, pain flaring despite my armor's protection. The crystal embedded in the Queen was now blindingly bright. Her psychic screams had changed tone, becoming higher, more desperate. The warriors around her were in disarray, some dropping to the ground, others attacking wildly. I struggled to my feet, my vision blurring. A hand gripped my arm, hauling me upright. "Move, Lieutenant Commander." It was Fletcher, his armor damaged but still functional. "That thing's about to release enough psionic energy to fry every brain within a kilometer." Together, we staggered toward the exit, where both our teams had already disappeared. The Queen's screams reached a crescendo behind us. The light from the crystal now so intense it cast our shadows sharp and black against the tunnel walls. We were still 20 meters from the main cavern when the crystal detonated. There was no sound, no heat, no shockwave, just a pulse of pure psionic energy that swept over us like a tsunami. If not for our armor, our minds would have been obliterated instantly. As it was, the protective systems overloaded, shutting down one by one as they absorbed the impossible surge. I felt Fletcher stumble beside me. Looking over, I saw his armor's energy lines flickering and dying. Mine couldn't be in much better shape. "Keep moving," he gasped, voice barely audible without the comm systems. "The effect is temporary. The drones will reboot within minutes." "The Queen?" I managed to ask as we continued our stumbling retreat. "Dead," he replied. "Or as good as. The disruptor severed her connection to the hive mind. Without it, her biological systems can't sustain themselves." We reached the main cavern, now eerily silent. The drones lay where they had fallen, immobilized by the psionic blast. Our teams were ahead, already entering the tunnel that would lead us back to the surface. "Not exactly according to plan," Fletcher said, a note of wry humor returning to his voice despite our situation. "Does it ever go according to plan?" I responded, falling into the familiar gallows humor of soldiers everywhere. "Almost never," he admitted, "but the objective was achieved. The Carrick forces on Earth are now effectively neutralized. Without the Queen's direction, they're just biomechanical husks." We reached the tunnel, joining our teams for the final push to the surface. Everyone showed signs of the battle. Damaged armor, injuries partially treated by emergency systems, exhaustion evident in every movement, but also determination. Victory! "What happens now?" I asked as we emerged into the night air, where Fletcher's ship waited, its sleek form reflecting the distant flashes of the space battle still raging in orbit. Fletcher paused, looking up at the sky. Now humanity rebuilds and prepares. Because the Carrick—
Even the strongest warriors refused. Attacking humans never ends well. The War Council fell silent the moment the name appeared on the holographic map. Earth! Not a massive empire, not a galaxy-spanning civilization. Just one blue world glowing quietly in the projection. And yet no one in the chamber volunteered to attack it. The silence stretched so long that the torches along the chamber walls flickered out one by one. At the head of the table, Overlord Krax of the Drevian war clans slammed a clawed fist against the stone. "Explain this cowardice!" he roared. We are the strongest warriors in 3 sectors! Our fleets have crushed empires! His gaze swept across the assembled commanders. Why? He demanded. Does no one wish to invade a single human system? No one answered. Finally, an old warrior at the far end of the chamber leaned forward. His armor was scarred, ancient, and patched from dozens of campaigns. General Vartal, the only survivor of the First Contact War. You truly wish to know? He asked quietly. The Overlord growled. Speak. Vartal touched the console before him. The hologram shifted. The chamber filled with the image of a battlefield in space. Burning wreckage drifted through a shattered fleet. Our armada arrived in their system with 600 warships, the old general said. Humans had only 40. A ripple of amusement moved through the younger commanders. Then victory was certain, one said. Vartal's gaze hardened. That was what we believed. The hologram moved forward in time. Human ships appeared on the projection. Small, rugged vessels with uneven armor plates and engines burning far hotter than safety standards allowed. They did not form battle lines, Vartal continued. They did not request surrender. The first explosions filled the hologram. Human ships accelerated directly into the enemy formation. Not retreating, not maneuvering, charging. One cruiser rammed our flagship escort, Vartal said. The image showed the impact. 2 vessels colliding in a storm of fire. They destroyed themselves, just to create an opening. The chamber grew quiet. Another scene appeared. Human fighters weaving through a debris field. Your fleets rely on precision formations, Vartal said.
You faced were just a scouting force. A test. When they realize what happened here, they'll send more. More. The thought was almost incomprehensible after what we'd just survived. He nodded grimly. But next time, you won't be facing them alone. The combined human fleet won't just evacuate survivors. We're here to integrate your Earth into the Alliance. To bring you the technology, the training, the resources you'll need. Why? I couldn't help but ask. Why risk so much for a parallel Earth that isn't even yours? Fletcher's expression softened slightly. Because we're human, Winters. All of us, across every reality. And humans have this annoying tendency to stand together when the chips are down. Want to see what humanity can accomplish when we put our minds to it. When we refuse to go quietly into the night. Behind us, dawn was breaking over the ruins of Geneva. The first sunlight in months that wasn't obscured by Carrick ships. The first day of a new chapter for Earth. I looked back at my team, battered, exhausted, but alive. At Fletcher's team, representatives of a humanity that had refused to be extinguished. And I made my decision. Lead the way, Captain. I think we've got some bugs to exterminate. The Arcturian diplomat blinked all 4 eyes simultaneously as Ethan finished his story, her blue skin having deepened to an impressed indigo. So that's how it began, she said after a moment of contemplative silence. The Human Interstellar Alliance. Ethan nodded, taking another swig from his canteen. That's how it began. One desperate last stand that wasn't so last after all. 20 years later, we've pushed the Carrick back across 12 star systems, integrated technology from 8 different human realities, and somehow managed not to kill each other in the process. He chuckled. Though sometimes that last part feels like the biggest miracle. The archives mentioned the technological leap, but not the emotional component, the diplomat observed. The determination. Yeah, well, that's humans for you, Ethan replied with a shrug. We're stubborn like that. Tell us we can't do something, and suddenly it's the only thing we want to do. Tell us we're destined for extinction, and we'll rewrite destiny just to be contrary. A formidable quality, she said, her translator struggling slightly with the concept. Formidable enough that the Galactic Council finally decided we might make better allies than enemies. Ethan pointed out with a knowing smile. The diplomat had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, or what passed for embarrassment in Arcturian physiology. The Council's initial caution was, perhaps excessive. Excessive, Ethan repeated with a laugh. That's diplomatic speak for, we were terrified of you wild monkeys and your cross-dimensional space armada. I would never characterize council policy in such terms, she protested, though a slight color shift around her neck betrayed her amusement. Ethan stood, stretching muscles that still ached sometimes from that long-ago battle. Tell your council this then. Humanity didn't fight the Carrick, didn't build this alliance, didn't develop all this terrifying technology because we wanted to conquer. We did it because we refused to be conquered. There's a difference. The diplomat rose as well, her forearms moving in the formal gesture of respect. I will convey your perspective accurately, Lieutenant Commander Winters. That's Ambassador Winters now, he corrected with a wink. And make sure you include the part about how human soldiers landed just as all hope was lost. The Council needs reminding occasionally that even the darkest moments can be turned around with enough stubbornness and the right allies.